So we are moving on to section 4.5. This is solving quadratics. And today we're going to do it by factoring. When I say we're solving by factoring, that's using the zero product property. I want to remind you guys, and I know I've said this to you hundreds of times, but I'm going to remind you, what we are finding when we are solving a quadratic is where the graph crosses the x-axis. Okay, so when we have a parabola, here is our quadratic, our solutions are where it crosses. So they have lots of different names. We can call them the solutions. We can call them the zeros. Again, referring back to the zero product property. We can also refer to these as roots. They're the roots of the quadratic. Okay, so there's lots of different names for where this crosses the x-axis, what we are finding today. All right, so zero product property. Here is our step. Step one, you're going to factor completely. Step two, you're going to set any factor with a variable equal to 0. Step 3, you're going to solve. All right, so here's the one thing I want to remind you. Before you factor completely, and I'm going to put this at the top, it must be set equal to 0. Okay, so when you start, before you factor it, everything's got to be on one side altogether. Okay? All right, so here we go. Example number 1. I'm going to give you one where we've already got it factored. So say I have 2x plus 1 and 3x minus 5 equals 0. So this one's already been factored on the left. So what we do is we take each one of these factors that have a variable in it, and we set it equal to 0. So I have 2x plus 1, whoops, helps if I write correctly. 2x plus 1 equals 0, and I have 3x minus 5 equals 0. Solving, I subtract 1 from both sides. I have 2x equals negative 1, dividing both sides by 2. X equals negative 1/2. So this is one place where it crosses the x-axis. Here I'm going to add 5 to both sides. So I have 3x equals 5. Dividing both sides by 3, x equals 5/3. Again, that's another spot where it crosses the x-axis. All right. So, example number 2. What if I have 3x times x minus 9 equals 0? Again, remember one of the things I said in those steps is that any factor with a variable in it is what you said equal to 0. So this factor that we undistributed, this one right here, that's also a factor. So I'm going to take 3x and set that equal to 0. I'm going to take x minus 9 and set that equal to 0. Dividing both sides by 3, I get x equals 0 here. And if I add 9 over, I get x equals positive 9. Again, that's the two places this parabola would cross the x-axis. All right, let's try another one. Now let's start to factor. Step. This is what your homework's going to kind of look like. It's going to say solve. That's it. Solve. Very basic. And maybe we have x squared minus 3x equals 4. All right. The first thing you have to do is get the whole thing set equal to 0. So we got to move 4 over. So we cannot factor until all of that's all on one side together. So I have x squared minus 3x minus 4 equals 0. All right, so now we're going to factor it. Last number times the first is negative 4. Middle number is negative 3. So my sides are negative 4 and 1. So my factors are x minus 4, x plus 1 equals 0. Now, any factor with an x in it, we're going to set equal to 0. So I have x minus 4 equals 0, and x plus 1 equals 0. So my first solution is x equals positive 4. My second solution is x equals negative 1. All right? Make sure you write them as factors when you set it equal to 0. Super important. You got to remember, when we get back together in January, we're not going to just do quadratics. We're going to be doing cubics and quartics, and we're going to be solving for x to the 5th power and finding all of those x's. So you've got to get in the habit of setting those factors equal to 0. All right, let's try another one. Let's make it a little bit tougher. So let's do example number 4. Again, I want you to solve. And let's solve for how about 3p squared equals 3p? All right, so the very first thing you have to do is set this equal to 0. So I have to subtract the 3p over. I have 3p squared minus 3p equals 0. Now I have to factor. All right, so the thing I always do is you take out the greatest common factor. Well, you can see I can take out a 3, I can undistribute 3, and I can undistribute a p. That leaves me with p minus 1 equals 0. So now, any factor with a variable in it, I'm going to set equal to 0. So 3p equals 0, and p minus 1 equals 0. Here, dividing by 3, I get p equals 0. And if I add 1 over, I get p equals 1. All right, let's make it just a little bit tougher. I love how I always like to do that. How about, let's do solve for, how about 5x squared equals 6x plus 8. All right, step number 1, we have to move it all over to one side together. So I have 5x squared minus 6x minus 8 equals 0. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and factor this. Is there a greatest common factor I can take out? There's not. So I'm going to draw my x. Last number times the first is negative 40. Middle number is negative 6. I need 2 factors of negative 40 that will give me negative 6, which is negative 10 and 4. But this time, my leading coefficient is not 1, so I have to draw my box, just like we did last night on homework. The first term in the trinomial goes here, 5x squared. Last term in the trinomial goes here, minus 8. My diagonal are the sides of my x, so negative 10x and 4x. Out of the first line, I can take out a 5 and an x. Out of the second line, I can take out a 4. Up and down, I can take out an x. And here, remember that negative right next to the side, and 2. So I have the factors 5x plus 4 times by x minus 2. Now I'm going to set each of those factors equal to 0. 5x plus 4 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. Subtract 4 from both sides. We get 5x equals negative 4. And divide both sides by 5. X equals negative 4 over 5. Adding 2 to the other side, we get x equals 2. Again, I want to remind you, this is where the parabola would cross the x-axis at negative 4/5 and at positive 2. All right, let's do one last example. Does anybody have any questions so far? Anybody at all? No questions? All right. Then let's throw one more example at you, and then I'll be done for today, so you guys can get to your next meeting. Again, I want you to solve. And let's solve for how about 3p squared equals 12p plus 15. All right, so first we're going to set it all equal to 0. So I got to move it all over. So 3p squared minus 12p plus 15 equals 0. All right, now I got to undistribute the greatest common factor. Well, out of all of those, I can take out a 3. Leaves me with p squared minus 4p plus 5 equals 0. Oh, I guess when I move it over, that's a negative. My bad. I fix it. So when I subtract 15 over, this should be a negative. All right. Okay. So now my leading coefficient is 1. So when I do my x, I won't have to do a box this time. The top of my x is negative 5. The bottom of my x is negative 4. So that's going to be negative 5 and 1. So I have p minus 5 times p plus 1. Don't forget my 3 in front equals 0. Now, any factor with a variable in it, we set equal to 0. So am I going to set this 3 equal to 0? No, it doesn't have a variable in it. So I have p minus 5 equals 0 and p plus 1 equals 0. Adding 5 to the other side, I should get p equals 5. Subtracting 1 to the other side, I get p equals negative 1. All right, I wanted to do this example because this does not have a variable in it. So you don't set that equal to 0. Only the factors with a variable. All right, any questions? Anybody at all? Everybody's good? Okay. Well, then I'm going to post these notes in case you missed something or you have any questions or you want to look at it again. I know you guys have a meeting in just a couple minutes, so I'm going to let you go. This is mainly what we're working on this week, okay? So have a great afternoon, you guys. Bye.